Welcome to Digits here at WSJ Live. I'm Simon Constable. Well, while we wait for Congress to get its act together, the fiscal cliff looms. We have continuing coverage here. Well, the fiscal cliff is looming, and let's hope we don't drive off it. And that's at least what a lot of tech CEOs want. The technology sector really worried about this, including Greg Brown. He is CEO of Motorola Solutions, and he joins us now from New Brunswick, New Jersey. Thank you very much for being here on the show with us.
Simon, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You wrote a letter along with a number of other tech CEOs imploring the president and Congress to get their act together. What specifically do you think they need to do? Do they need to come to an agreement now, no matter what it is, or do they need to do something a bit more than that?
I think what we're expecting from both the president and Congress is to act, and act with a sense of urgency. Now that the political calculus and the election rhetoric is behind us, we need a compromise deal that is a balance of spending reductions and tax revenue increases in a way that will provide stability and certainty for private investment and economic recovery to continue. We think it's absolutely critical. It's a bipartisan effort. Nothing's more important than that.
So nothing's more important than coming to an agreement, but surely it must be the right one. You were on President Obama's President's Management Advisory Board. Is there anything from when you were on that you think he really needs to pay attention to in terms of what it takes to get the economy going again, to get its mojo back?
Well, I think short term, the answer is to resolve the fiscal cliff. As a matter of fact, I just returned from Asia. I was in Malaysia and Cambodia, meeting with senior government officials, and before we talked about the conditions unique to those countries, the first thing they talked about, believe it or not, was the fiscal cliff, because it's not just domestically here that's important for the U.S. economy, but a lot of our international partners look for this kind of decision-making and stability as well, so we could signal that our system still works, we know what we need to do for remediation and to further stabilize economic recovery, and it's critical.
Greg, we've seen over the last couple of years times when things get to the last minute, a temporary deal is cut and then it's extended, just leaving us to do the same thing, or the Congress at least to do the same thing again. How do they get to that situation when they actually come to an agreement that sticks?
That's a great question. I think a temporary deal won't cut it. We've had the Super Committee, we've had the Gang of Six. To your point, Simon, we've had a number of different efforts to resolve this, and the can keeps getting kicked down the road. Now that the election is behind us, and the fiscal cliff is literally 40 days away and counting, I think there's bipartisan recognition that a framework deal needs to occur. I personally believe a transitionary deal or a temporary extension is the wrong way to go, and that will signal further volatility and uncertainty in the financial markets that won't be favorable to the U.S. economy. Right now, as business CEOs, we're very concerned about it, but we're also not sitting on our hands. We're actively engaging in the bipartisan discussion in Washington, both sides of the aisle, active with the administration, and I am cautiously optimistic. Despite this game of chicken, I believe that there is a recognition that we've reached the end of the line, and a decision and a framework deal needs to get made, and I think it will be. I think there'll be a lot of ebb and flow between now and then, but I believe that we'll be able to resolve this and launch ourselves into 2013.
Greg, you mentioned that we need to see tax revenue increases. Does that mean, and that's an important way, the people who are saying that, look, we don't necessarily need to put tax rates up, is that what you mean? We just need to get more money coming in. Is that what you mean?
Well, I think that's part of the debate. Elimination of the loopholes will clearly raise tax revenues, and I think there's a lot of agreement that needs to occur. Whether actual marginal rates go up is part of the continuing debate. The president signaled that he wants $1.6 trillion of tax revenue, when, if we believe what we have read and heard, that Boehner and the president were close around 800 billion last time, then that's probably the goalposts by which the conversation and the negotiation will take place. What we don't want to do as part of the Fix the Debt group, which is 130 companies and 130 CEOs strong, is to be overly prescriptive. There's a variety of ways to skin this cat, but it must have a combination of tax revenues and spending cuts, and everybody knows that.
Okay, tax revenues and spending cuts, but I want to come back to this thing about the tax rates. I've worked in business, done analysis on projects, and I know that even if the company I worked for didn't pay any taxes and wasn't likely to, I still had to use that 35% tax rate. You'll have been there in your career too. So what about bringing down that corporate tax rate? Is that the right thing to do, and then eliminating those all the deductions and stuff so that you can get those projects rolled out the door?
No question. So short term is resolve the fiscal cliff. Medium term is comprehensive tax reform, to your point. The corporate rate needs to be lowered. The base needs to be broadened. It should be revenue neutral, which we think is achievable with the elimination of the loopholes. So lowering the corporate rate, broadening the base, and the business community believes in moving to a more territorial tax system so that we are on a level playing field with our international competitors. So the UK and Japan just went to a territorial rate. The worldwide system the U.S. uses is archaic, and our corporate tax rate is now the highest in the world. So short-term, resolve the cliff. Medium-term is structural tax reform to improve the U.S. competitiveness. Okay,
very quickly, if the tax rate was to come down, say it went down from 35% to 25%, how many people do you envisage hiring in the U.S.? I mean, 10,000? What is the number?
Well, I think that I don't know the answer to the specific hiring question. What I do know is if the corporate tax rate is lower, it'll improve the competitiveness of U.S. headquartered multinationals, which then gives us the discretion to either increase capital spending, hiring people, doing a variety of things with that capital that we think will seed growth in a sustainable way that will facilitate and accelerate the economic recovery and eliminate this overhang of uncertainty and a tax structure that's non-competitive.
Thank you very much, Greg Brown, CEO of Motorola Solutions. We'll have more continuing coverage on the fiscal cliff here at WSJ Live and on WSJ.com.